Are you looking for a chance to improve your Espanol, get hands on experience at medical clinics in rural communities, and immerse yourself in a rich and diverse cultural environment? Stay tuned to hear all about the Dominican Republic Beyond the Classroom Study Abroad program on a special edition of the Honor Roll podcast. Coming up next. Hey Honor Schools, we are back with another bonus episode of the Honor Roll podcast. Today we are talking with honor student Lana Almukhtar about her time in the Dominican Republic. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, thank you so much for having me. Hi, I'm Lana Almukhtar. I'm a second-year biomedical science student on the pre-med track, and I'm really excited to be here.
Great. It's so nice to have you on the
Thank you so
podcast.
much.
So you went on the Dominican Republic Beyond the Classroom study abroad program. Can you tell us a little bit, like an overview of the trip, what you did, and what kind of inspired you to go on it?
Yeah, of course. So basically, the study abroad trip itself is focused on medical sort of humanities practice. We worked with Dr. Carroll. He has an institute that is established in the Dominican Republic that works with both Dominican and Haitian communities, specifically rural, and he works to provide medical care for those individuals who may not have access to resources or in general, the community is just not well off enough to provide those resources. And so basically on the trip, not only did we get to go and interact with the people of the community, but you go and practice whatever techniques that he teaches you in terms of medical care. So we would go and do rotations in vitals and pharmaceuticals. We learned about those. We also learned about the overall like public health policy in the Dominicans and how it relates to like the disparities in health that they have over there. So overall, it was just a very a very philanthropic, very multifaceted sort of experience that you do get to have. And I really got started with it. Initially, I spoke to my advisor my first year, and he was like, "What do you think about doing a study abroad?" And like I'm someone who comes from a very not like sheltered sort of environment. Like I've been home most of the time. I don't really travel alone. So this was very like, oh, this is daunting. Like I've never had this experience before. So I applied on a whim because I was like, this is really exciting and I've never heard about this. So I applied and I got in. And yeah, so it was great from there.
Wow, that's such a wonderful experience. I love how enriching it sounds. Like you
Yeah.
really get that hands-on experience. Were you able to like work with patients like alongside them?
Yeah, so basically, not only did we get to learn like the public health aspect of it all, but Dr. Kroll actually had us work alongside him within his clinic. So basically, all of us, it was around like I think 17 students in the entire trip. And basically, we were randomly paired in groups, and every single clinic that we went to, I think we went to about three or four. In each clinic, we would change rotations. So, for example, like my first rotation was in the pharmaceutical section. So, my partners and I were assigned to distribute all of the medications, assign them to the specific patients. We were supposed to do the specific dosages, and then in vitals, you would do, the vitals of the patients. Post-op, you would provide them with the instructions for whatever medications. So yeah, you were able to work hands-on with the patients and interact with them. That's when, like learning the language was really important. And I think that is an aspect that a lot of people were scared of. But thankfully, like Dr. Kroll was so inviting, so welcoming to be able to, he reassured us, even though we didn't have a great hold on the language, we were still able to get by completely. So that was really nice.
Do you remember any of the like phrases that you had to ask?
I just remember, like, just a lot of it was just like, tengo dolor, like, and I was
Uh-huh.
like, oh, really? And I was just trying to get by, but it definitely worked out, like,
Yeah.
in the end, yeah. Thankfully, like, we also had, like, Spanish practice,
Mhm.
like, when we were in the kiosco, which is, like, the main central point of where were we staying at, like, where our lectures would be. So every single week, we would have, like, I think 2 or 3 Spanish lessons where we would learn, like, the different names for the symptoms and
Oh, that's
the
so nice.
yeah,
That's
so
really immersive,
very
and
much
it's
so.
nice because you get to practice it at the same time, so
Yeah.
you're learning and then
Yeah.
you're going to practice it.
Yeah, and it definitely, like, it's scary at first because 'cause you're like, "I have no idea what I'm gonna be doing," but then, like, once you actually get into it, you start to get more, like, you get used to having to talk to those patients and also, like, how to be culturally sensitive to them. I think that's something that's really important as well, is that not only do you have to know how to, what to do, but you have to know how to do it. It is different, like us being a Western society and then going to a country that we're not familiar with, not the culture, not the practices, not even the way, the dynamics between the people. It's really important to know how to talk to them in a respectful way. Since we're coming in as foreigners, we can't just like expect that we can't expect them to understand exactly how we act. We have to be more accommodating to them.
Right.
Yeah.
You're talking about the different rotations that you had. Did you have
hmm
a favorite one out of all of them?
I think mine specifically was shadowing with Dr. Curl, because that was also another one. It was like check-in, then vitals, then shadowing with Dr. Curl, where he would actually talk to the patients, and then pharmacy and post-op. So with
Mhm.
shadowing, Dr. Curl and then the other doctors that were working there, you would go alongside him and you would basically learn from him whatever he's doing, how he's talking to the patients. You see how the patients come and, interact with him, discuss their symptoms and what's going on. So it's very immersive, and especially like as a pre-med, you are like the idea is so abstract, when you're thinking about it, when you're learning about it,
When
but
you're in the
when you're
classroom, right?
exactly, but when you're actually like immersed into it, you realize like it's so much more than you thought it was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So how long is the program? Like, kind of what did you described to me like the rotations, but what
hmm
did your day-to-day look like? You'd get up and
Yeah.
talk about a little
It
bit
was
about that.
like every day was different. Basically, like how it worked. Our living situation was that we the girls and the guys were separated. So the girls were separated in two houses. I was with my host mom was named Mama Sandra. So shout out to Mama Sandra. She was amazing, but it was smaller than the other house with Mama Yesenia. And so I had one roommate, and then we lived together, and every morning we would have to wake up around like 8 o'clock. They'd have breakfast. We'd start off with our lectures for the day, and usually we'd go down to the like the community center. That's where Dr. Kroll would actually host the lectures. And again, they would be about like public policy, and we'd also learn about the culture. So like they came in and they actually brought in two bachata dancers, and so
That's
they
so
taught us how to do that. It
really.
was really nice. And so it wasn't just like, it wasn't just all seriousness, but like you really got to immerse yourself in the culture,
Yeah.
which is really nice. And then after lectures, we would either, take a break, go have lunch, go swim. That was a lot of fun. And then we would go into learning how to actually go like practice our rotations. So that was really nice. And then we'd have Spanish class. And then for the majority of it, we would just, play outside playing with the kids. That's what's really nice too, is like not only did we live with the host families and get to interact with the host parents, but also their children. And they always came around and sat with us to play. They would help us like with our Spanish a lot of the times. Specifically, Mateo, he was the director of our host family situation. His son, Mateo, he would always be around there and he would be playing with us.
Aw.
And he was just like such a sassy little kid, and he taught us so much. Yeah, but it was a lot of fun.
That sounds like you really got to like be part of their
Yeah.
community there. What about like with the other students? Were you
Mhm.
kind of able to form those strong bonds with them as well?
Yeah, like the thing I found like really nice about it, the trip was I went into it not knowing a lot of people. I had my close friend Fadi come with me. So we were in it together, but for the most part, like you are meeting new people and you're in a new country, so that's really scary. It definitely is, especially when you're alone and you haven't traveled by yourself. But like the second that we got to the Dominicans, like you could tell that there was this sense of like community between the students. And after time, we got really, really close, and we learned so much about each other. And what's really nice too is that the majority of us were pre med, but even if they weren't, we learned so much from everyone. Like I think that like what's nice too is that there were older like students, more like upper. Not we're the underclassmen, so they would be upperclassmen, and I learned so much from them in terms of like how their track is going, in terms of mindset, especially at like such a young age going through this path. It's not easy. And then at the same time, it's like you talk to the people that are my age, and I learned so much from them as well, because it's like every person, they have something so special to them, and the way that they're so passionate about what they're doing from a young age, you really get to learn more, and you also get to feel like a sense of comfort that, like, there are people going through this as well.
Right. It
Yeah,
sounds like you had the opportunity to kind of find your mentors there,
very much so,
right?
yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about like anything that you found challenging about being on the trip?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing was like the adjustment of like where you're living. You again, like when I was listening to Akash and Nushin in the honors, the first segment, yeah,
The first ever
a very
episode of
full
the Honorable
circle
Podcast.
moment. Yeah. I was listening to them and they were talking about like, like how there's not a lot of access to electricity or like hot water. And I was like, that's not going to be that bad. But like you are used to the way that you live. And then imagine like one day you're just in a new place and you're not used to it at all. You have to really navigate how you're going to be able to stay there for the next 2 weeks. Um, so at first it was difficult. Like the first day, the heat was definitely a little bit something to get used to. But then afterwards, it's like you you have to kind of put your pride aside and be able to just be like, I need to adapt. And it's okay if I struggle in the beginning, but it'll get better later on and you're not even going to think about it later. Like um the first couple of days were a little bit difficult, but then like I was completely fine. Like the heat was so like it got so bad sometimes that taking a cold shower was like
The best
the
thing you
best
can
thing. Yeah,
do.
like 3 times a day. It was great.
Yeah.
But it's definitely an adjustment. But I think that's like what's important, especially like what honors teaches us, I think, is that adaptability is so important because you're going to be put in situations that you can't even expect ever. So it's really I think it's vital to be able to just like calm yourself down and just take on whatever you have
Yeah,
to.
absolutely.
And just to go back to what I was saying before about like the mentors that I had, something that I also thought was really interesting that Emerson had actually told me was about like mindset and perspective. And I think that's something that you really learn on this trip is the fact that like we come from such a privileged place, being in the US itself. And so when you go to a country that may not have access to as many resources, you really think about the fact that whatever career path I'm doing, I am privileged to have those opportunities. So it's like taking advantage of them is so important. And it just kind of also like builds you up, gives you more confidence to be able to go through something that's not as easy as you think it is, you know?
Do you see yourself doing something like this in the future in your career?
Yeah, 100%. I would love to. Like, I think it gives you a lot of perspective again, and a lot of exposure. I think that, studying and reading these textbooks is not going to it's going to give you a very narrowed mindset. And you're not going to really understand other people's points of view until you actually go and experience it for yourself and talk to other people, learn from the community. I think that was really nice to be able to talk to the host families because they told us about, what their life was like. We got to share our experiences too with them. And it just creates this really nice dynamic where you learn so much and you really grow from those points of your life.
Yeah. Did you have like any fondest memories of the trip? Just like little like any fun moments that
Yeah,
you're like, oh,
no, I can like give you 1,000, but I think the biggest one was that like at night we would always go up to the mountains because the where we live, the Kiosko and like all of the different houses were kind of on a mountain. So at night we would actually go up and we would stargaze because like there's no lights up
wow.
there and so you can see
Yes. No
everything.
city lights.
And it was absolutely beautiful. And I think it was really nice to be able to like it was a quiet moment between everyone that was on the trip. So it was really nice to bond like that.
That sounds so
Yeah.
sweet. Lastly, I wanted to ask what you would say to students that are looking to sign up for this program, what advice you would give.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing is it may seem a little bit scary at first, especially when you're an underclassman. But the reality is you're not going to be able to grow unless you are able to take opportunities like that may seem daunting in the beginning. And also that there's no harm in trying. Like nothing is, you're only going to get better and you're only going to improve. And it's a really nice experience to have. Again, like I said, you don't want to have like a narrow perspective as you grow up. You want to be able to be more open minded and to be able to connect with a lot of different people. And so, an experience like this will teach you so much, and you're going to have such a great time. And the people you meet along the way will be in your life forever. So, it's really great experience. Definitely sign up.
Great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be here on the podcast. And if you're interested in trips like the Dominican Republic beyond the classroom, check the Honors website for more information on how you can apply. That'll do it for this week's episode. The Honor Roll podcast is recorded in the Judy Genshaft Honors College at the University of South Florida Tampa campus. Production assistance is provided by honor student Sandra Napolitano. Thank you all so much for listening, and please do not forget to rate and review our podcast, as we really appreciate your feedback. We'll be back next week with more honor stories, so stay tuned for more episodes where we talk more honor study abroad. Until next time, go Bulls!